Hello everyone, welcome to Music Talk Live number 40. Again, it's amazing that we've gone this far, but hello Reki, hello Jenny, hello everyone else. Please do join the chat room so I know who you are. And if you're new, introduce yourselves and say hello. So what's up? How is it going this week? I hope you're all doing fine. It's pretty cold here today. I don't know, it was almost summer last week, and then this week we've got a cold wave coming from somewhere, I guess from Siberia or something. I don't know, but it's gonna be cold for a few days and then it's gonna get better. So I know some of you are in very warm places like Sri Lanka, right? And some of you, or Turkey or Mexico, but some of you are from the north as well. You're from Canada and Russia. So let me know how's it going in your neck of the woods, so to speak. And so today we're going to talk about how to memorize music, which is a very important thing. And what happened was just a few days ago, actually no, it was last week. Last week, I played the piano, right? Or I tried to. And I was showing a friend because I said, look, I finished this sonata by Beethoven, which is like 10 or 11 pages of score. And I played it for him, and he wasn't really impressed, I think, by the way I played it. He was more impressed by the fact that I knew the whole thing by heart and I memorized the whole thing. And that's all he asked about. He didn't ask me how I played it. I didn't ask if it was hard to play and how long did it take you to. No, it was just about the memorization. And I realized that it was kind of a mystery to him. How could anyone memorize 11 pages of music? And we talked about it. I said, well, I can't even go through a song without forgetting stuff. And here you are playing 12 pages of music by Beethoven, which is like, 1,000 notes per bar, and you don't even play the piano too well. Well, I didn't say that, but I think he thought it. And so I figured that it would be something interesting, something I've talked about with my students many times. We had the discussion many times, and I've been given advice for a long time to my students and to other people after, what happens also after shows. Again, some people might compliment me on the playing, but a lot of people are just interested in seeing how I managed to go through 1.5 hours of playing instrumental music with thousands of notes and to remember all of them, or almost, right? And so I thought this would be something interesting. I'm kind of condensing all the stuff that I found out. I think I might, speaking of a memory video, I might have forgotten something that, or just kind of slipped my mind, but I will give you some of the best tips that I can think of to use it for memorizing music. And it applies to everything. It applies to memorizing actual music, like songs and pieces, if you're a repertoire kind of oriented guy. And it will also work if you're studying. So for example, scales. I am often asked of course, by students, they're going, how can you know all these scales and all these chords? Well, to me, it's completely normal, but I think when you do it so long as I have, then you think everybody can do it, and everybody can do it, but you think that everybody should do it. You should be doing it now. How can you not remember, 120 scales, right? And you kind of lose sight of the steps that you take to get there. So I'm going to share those steps. And some of these steps were unconscious, so I kind of did it because I didn't know any better. And some of them I actually thought about it, and as you guys know, some of you know, I'm a psychologist. I'm actually a psychologist, so you better be thankful that I chose to play the guitar instead of starting to work as what my degree says, because otherwise some of you might end up in my care, and then you would end up worse off than you were when you came in, I guess. So we're going to talk about that, all right? So I'm going to give you all my secrets, which are not really secret because I kind of share everything here with you. But let me say hello to everybody in the chat room. There's Reki, there's Jenny, Levent, hello, good to see you. It's sunny in Toulouse, France. All right, Reki, good to hear about that. Weather is nice, Jim, great. And thank you, Levent. Yes, everything is great on my side, and it's good to see you. I wonder where Indrajit is. We haven't seen him in a while, so hopefully he'll show up later. And Alex. There's 2 or 3 people who we've been missing lately. But so what else? As always, there's links down there to get all my music if you want. You can just stream it. You don't have to buy it. If you want to buy it, there's CDs. And if you feel that what you learn in these videos is useful to you and you want to chip in and contribute, there's a little PayPal thing, because I don't do Patreon, because I give all the information to everyone. But then if you do find it useful and that you learn things and you want to participate and contribute. Some of you have chosen to do it monthly, some of you want to do it once in a while, and some of you don't want to do it at all, or maybe they would like to do it, but they can't, because I understand this is a strange situation we're living in, and it's no problem at all, so I just hope you enjoy it. But if you do want to chip in, then I'll take it, all right? So we're gonna begin, and more and more people are coming in. Hello, everyone. If you're not in the chat room, please feel free to join. We're all kind of nice, all right? And what else? Let's begin. Let's begin. I have no pictures this week to show you. I didn't do anything special, but there is a piece of news that I would like to share, but I can't yet. So maybe in a couple of weeks I'll be able to announce it. It's pretty cool. It's a new project that I'll be doing, and it's really interesting. All right, so how do you memorize music? Again, I'm talking about memorizing repertoire, so actual pieces of music, or just memorizing things that you want to learn that have to do with music. These can be chords, they can be scales, they can be even theory, you know, learning how and when to use something or something else, right? So that's what we're going to focus on. And the first thing, I'm going to get it out of the way, but the first thing is hard work. The first thing is repetition. Most people who are surprised by the fact that I can play a 2-hour or 1 hour and a half concert with 20-some songs in it and not forget them, they're not surprised either when I tell them that I spend maybe before a run of shows, I might be doing 2 hours or 2.5 hours every day. I'll play the set 1 or 2 times. And that's what I would do. Plus rehearsals with the band, okay? So it sounds, it looks great if you play the whole show and you remember everything, but what's behind it is a lot of work. When my friend saw me play the Sonata by Beethoven on the piano, he didn't know that I can spend literally 4 or 5 or 6 hours on an 8-bar or on a 8, maybe less bar piece of music. Okay, so that's the first thing, and this is something that's not negotiable. It doesn't matter if you're gifted with a certain kind of memory, which we'll talk about soon, or if you're not. You have to go through a lot of repetition. And with music, the good thing about it is that you will kind of have to go through repetition anyway, because things don't kind of work out. It's not like you play something the first time and you're good to go. Usually you kind of have to repeat it anyway. But instead of repeating it mindlessly, what you're trying to do is repeat it consciously. So here's a little trick that I found that works very well. If you, for example, you're learning a scale, okay, and you're learning it in one position of the neck. The first thing you should do is, of course, play it a few times, reading it. That's fine. Read the scale. And by the way, this is the reason why I never leave tab. My students hate me. I never give them anything. If they really need it, I will give it to them. Otherwise, I give no tabs. I give nothing. Okay? And I tell them, go home, harmonize the scale in, in fifths and fourths, all across the neck, in all keys, and bring it back. Okay? I won't do it for them. So that's the first thing. But anyway, you can read the scale, and then you play. And what I would do is, I would play up until I can't remember it anymore, and then I still try to remember it, and if there's no way that I can remember it, then I will read it again up to the next note from the one I forgot. Okay, so I will play it from the beginning by reading just to make sure that I'm doing it right, and then as soon as I see one note, I try to play the whole thing again just by memory. So I'm always actively working. I'm never looking at the page if I can avoid it. Okay, and usually you can avoid it. And so the page becomes, instead of the source of the information, it just becomes a confirmation of the information, if you know what I mean. So I'm playing and I say, did I do it right? Then I'll confirm it on the page. Or what was I supposed to be playing here? Let me think. I can't think of it. Let me check it out. All right. Or if I'm preparing a song of mine and I forget it, I listen to the record later. First of all, I try to figure it out, play it a few times and see if it comes back into my fingers. Okay. So that's the first thing. Repetition is the easiest one to talk about. And it's the most important one. Everything else won't work unless you do this. Okay, so keep in mind that the best musicians you see, you go to see a concert and you see the greatest musicians, they all spend countless hours before they go on stage. The weeks and months before, they do it a lot. One thing that I will talk about very quickly is the same applies in the studio. I'm one who likes to play what you hear. I played it. I'm not into cutting and pasting, not because I think it's wrong. It's just boring to me. It's extremely boring to go and collage melodies, and then this is not what I wanted to say because I took one word from one note from one melody and another for another. So the best musicians go to the studio rehearsed. I've seen it many times. I do help produce some bands here once in a while. And if they're not rehearsed, it's a pain in the butt, to go through it. And so rehearsal is the same. So repetition before recording, repetition before performance, repetition before pretty much anything. All right, so that's the first thing, the easiest one to talk about, and I think it's clear. By the way, as always, ask your questions and I'll, feel free to interrupt. All right, this is the second thing that I notice a lot of people messing up. And they try to memorize basically what they see. That's another reason why I'm not for having everything written down and tabs and everything, because I can't tell you how many times a student goes, oh wait, was it 5 or 4, or was it 2 here, and what does that mean? Well, that means you are memorizing numbers, which is cool in a way. But first of all, you should go to the sound, because if you go to the sound, not only you'll improve your ear, but it's much easier to memorize sound than it is to memorize data. So you can try this. You can try, if you watch a movie, for example, you will not remember the dialogue as perfectly, word for word. You will not memorize it as easily as you'll be able to sing the main theme when you leave the theater. Go see Batman, and you'll know the minor third thing, or yeah, I think it was the theme. You'll know it right away. You go see, Indiana Jones. You see all these movies. Everybody knows the music, and they've watched the movie just as many times for the music as for the words. But few people will come out with more than a couple of sentences from the movie. But the music stays with you. So the music is easier. If you listen to Mozart and you look at the score, and I have to ask you, which one would you rather do? Would you rather be able to sing me the melody, or to study and repeat or copy the score by heart? Nobody will choose that. It will be too much work. But humming it to me or singing it to me, then everybody can do that. All right. So that's why it's not because music is music and you should listen to it and notes are bad. It's just that truly it is easier to memorize music. And when you have a clear image in your mind of the music you want to produce, be it a piece of music or a scale or a chord, when you have that in your mind, then the fingers will kind of follow. If you have a foggy idea in your mind, then the fingers won't know what to do. Okay, and that's another thing we're going to talk about later, but truly hear what it is you want to play. And while we're on the subject, and I will go fast today, okay, I don't want to bore you because I'll be talking a lot, but maybe if you get bored, then pause this video. If you come from the future, you can pause it and come back later, but I am trying to share everything I know in a quick video, so I'll go pretty fast. And what was I going to say? See, I'm an idiot. Now I forgot. I should have written it down. But so anyway, when a student is trying to play something or improvise, and you see them going nowhere, it's usually because they're not listening. They're not listening. They're thinking with their fingers. I had a discussion with one of my students. I think he's here. He's not participating in the chat room, but I think he's there. So you know who you are. And he's jamming, but he's doing all these vibratos and all these bends and all these runs, and they come from the fingers. So I won't let it slide. If you do that and you're one of my students, you're gonna get it. And eventually, when I make him play what he hears, it's a totally different kind of music. Totally different. It sounds like him with mistakes. Maybe the bend is slightly off. Whatever. That doesn't matter. But it is him playing. Okay. So that's another advantage of going to the sound. So sound is king. The notes and everything come later. All right. So go for the sound. As a matter of fact, if you're trying to figure out a song by somebody or a piece of music, make sure you hear it. Listen to it often. Listen to it, many, many times. If you're trying to play a Segovia piece on the classical guitar, you have to hear it. You have to listen to it. That's your reference. That's how you will guide your fingers from your memory. Okay. Next thing is to start small. Wait, there should be a shade here on the. Let me try to fix it right now, because then you won't be able to read it otherwise. Let's see. Sorry, just a second. You should be seeing the text be a bit more legible. Yeah, there you go. Okay, so start small. That's another thing. There's no problem at all in learning one little bit at a time. Okay, because what happens is when you try to learn everything at once, the level of confusion of the whole thing affects everything else. So if I'm learning a scale, for example, right, and whatever scale I'm learning, and I insist on playing it beginning to end, beginning to end, beginning to end, right, all the time. All those little mistakes and those little insecurities never get corrected. I still play it all the time, and I play it all the time. So maybe I end up playing it 50 times. Every time I play it, because it's a foggy idea that I have in my mind of what it is I'm learning, I might be making a mistake here, an imprecision there, I might be doing a little something wrong there, and maybe later screw up there. Okay, so every time I play it, I'm in this endless loop of surprises, right? But if I choose to only play the first 5 notes, now how many times do you think I have to do that to memorize them? 1, 2, 3, 4 times, and that's it. So I haven't wasted 50 times, I've used 4 or 5. And now when I have this, you'll be surprised how much easier it is to add more things above it, or in this case below it, right? And I can go, maybe I'll do my octave, right? I just do 1 octave. And then when I have that ready, now my ear gets into play because now I heard the whole octave. So now I have the octave and I know what everything else will sound like. The ear starts guiding my fingers. And it's a cascading thing. And the results are amazing. If you're learning a piece of music, go for the shortest motif or little theme or, riff or lick, whatever it is. Go for the shortest section. Go for the shortest nucleus of information. Work on that. There's no problem. Maybe you spend an hour on 3 notes. That's fine, because then everything else will come by itself. Okay, so that's very important, and that's one issue that I see all the time. If you're in a band and people keep messing up the song, you should do the song piece by piece. Okay? If you're in my band, I get upset because I expect people to do that at home, right? But it doesn't matter. If it happens, you'll get all the best results by saying, okay, well, you know what? Let's play the intro only. Then let's play the intro with the verse. And then let's play the first half of the song. And then from the solo. And that's how you practice. And that's how you control all the variables that will eventually, end up screwing you up. So go small and go section by section. Finally, many sections and many ideas in music repeat. They might not repeat verbatim. Sometimes they are, they recall something, or sometimes they're variations. We're going to talk about that in a second. But if you get a good idea and a good feel for the main thing, then everything else will become easier because it comes from the first part. So most songs are not, the sections of a song, they're not in a vacuum, they're connected. And so the clearer the idea you have of the first section, the easier it is to move on to the other ones. Okay? Scales are the same, of course, they repeat. Chords are the same. Don't learn 50 chords in a day, learn 2. And then tomorrow the next 2, and eventually they will all kind of tie with one another. Once you know all your minor chords, it's not that big of a stretch to learn a minor 7th, is it? And when you know your minor 7th, then the minor 9 is kind of a done deal, right? You don't have to start from scratch. If you go through 50 chords every day and you don't know what you're doing, then it's not the best option, okay? So go small in the beginning and then work your way out. Okay, are you guys getting bored? I was afraid of this video because I knew I was going to talk too much. So please let me know you're still awake and that you are indeed learning something. Okay, if not, that's cool too. I've been making a lot of videos lately, so not all of them will work. But if you can, look beyond my babbling, I think you'll get some useful things out of this. Okay, the next thing is to search for patterns. And they can be big or small, and they can be repetitions, which literally means you learn a verse very well, and the next verse is probably going to be the same, or they're going to be variations. So you learn the first, verse, and you discover the second verse. Maybe it's very similar. Maybe just the end changes because it goes to another section of the song. Maybe the first verse goes back to the chorus, but the second one goes to a bridge. Whatever it is, you'll still be on top of it. Okay, you're still awake. Great, not bored. All right, great. All right, guys. So I'll keep going, and so you search for patterns. I have an example for you. By the way, you guys know about the 21 Licks book. There's a free book. There's no strings attached at all. Okay, so don't feel that there is any. there's you can download it down there. It's called 21 licks, and it's 21 licks. That's exactly what it is. And this example is from that book. So if you're watching this and you don't have the PDF, just go down and download it. There's nothing, there's no email. I don't need anything from you. Just get the book. And then why did you do it? Well, because I think it's useful, and also because then you can also buy my other 2 books, which are for sale. But really, you can just get the 21 licks book and there's nothing expected of you. So this is an example from one of those songs. It's from the song Upside Up. And the reason I'm putting it up here on the screen is that I want to show you a little something. So you see this and you're like, oh my God, what is this, right? So the first thing I would do is say, okay, well, what kind of pattern am I recognizing? Before I even go to the 3-note pattern that 850 you see in the beginning, I would probably more think of, let me see all those measures. Look at all those measures, measures by measure. I see that even though it has a strange pattern that we'll get into later, I see a bunch of, if I look at the score, I see a bunch of G, E, and B. But if you look at the numbers, 850, then I see a bunch of 705s. I see a bunch of 1070, right? You see that? There's some things that are messed up, like the 4th measure. The 5th measure maybe has some variation, and the 6th seems a bit more complicated. But I don't really have to think too much about the first 3 measures, for example, okay? Because the first 3 measures are really clearly defined by the notes that I'm playing with them. So that's the first thing I would do. I would go, okay, that's my first plan is this, okay? So I understand there's a bunch of repetition. Even, for example, the 5th measure, which is half repetitious and the other half not, I probably don't have to even read the first half. The first half comes free because I already worked on the first one. Okay, so that's the thing. Same with the 4th. I can take advantage of at least half a measure. So whereas somebody might be reading every single note and make a mess of it, I probably would go like, okay, I don't have to read pretty much anything. I just have to read maybe 2 or 3 spots. And the other thing is this: if I try to play the first measure, 850, 850, 850, I realize that it's not very, it's not intuitive, right? Because you have, and that's kind of the idea behind this piece actually, because I have a subdivision in 16 notes. It's all 16 notes, which means it's all 4 notes per beat, like 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a. But the notes sound like 3 notes per beat, sound 850. Well, let me play it for you. I won't sing it. So, right? So it sounds like it's 3 notes. So that's the first thing that would really mess you up if you're trying to read from the page. But if you see it and think of it beforehand, then you wouldn't have any issues. Okay, so I would go, okay, first of all, the big patterns, done. I know my measures. Okay, I know that I only have to read a few things. Second thing is, let me see that 850 thing, and I realize, okay, so he's playing 3 notes over 4. All I have to do is, how many 8s do I see? So it's, or I would rather look at the G's, right? The highest note of the measure. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. As long as I count 5 of those, then I'm kind of set. And all I have to think about is 850, 850, 5 times, plus 1 5 or 1 E. That's my first measure. I don't read it. I don't have to read it. Let me get rid of this screen here, because I'm always talking to myself, but this is worse, right? So if you need to watch it again, you have the PDF, right? So you can follow along. But 850, 850, 850. So I don't go like this. 1 E and, oh shit, no. 850, no. You know, this is too much work. So all I have to do is this. That's it. And then I know that I have 1 missing note. So that's all I have to do. And the next one is the same thing, but I see it ascending. And I just have to think, well, make sure you know where it starts. It's a bit backwards, but as long as I have that, see, if you try counting this, it's a lot of work, okay? And it says so in the intro to this piece. I'm used to it. I've always loved imposing one subdivision over another. So the perceived subdivision is triplets, ta 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 ta. But the real subdivision is 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 and a. And I always enjoy doing it. So to me, it sounds pretty easy. But if you're not used to it, or you're a student, or you're learning something else that is difficult, then that's how you do it. Okay, so that's how I would do that. And then the little parts that are different, those are the exception, you see? So if I have to learn this, that's all I'm thinking about. I'm not thinking of the first. All this section is the same pretty much throughout. Down, up, maintain the 3/4, that's it. All I have to think about is, that's it. Now the second part is a bit more complicated, and in that section then you probably have to think a bit more about it, but usually it's all the same. So you look for patterns, you look for repetitions, and you look for variations, and also you look for interruptions of those patterns, okay? And sounds kind of like a Gojira's riff. You know, I have no idea, actually just saying, I haven't listened to anything by Gojira, I think. It sounds terrible to say that because I do know the name, but I actually don't listen to a lot of, I listen to a lot of music, but, and you know, maybe I did listen to them, but I thought they were very heavy. Weren't they very heavy, a very heavy band? I think I'm just not hip like some people, but I know a lot about Queen, you know, and I do listen to all kinds of music all day. I listen to a lot of music, but I'll check them out. If you like them and you're here, it means probably there's some common ground there, so I'll check them out. But you see what I mean about this, and this is played, of course, over, you know, it's a strange riff, but that's how I would do it. Now, of course, very quickly, big or small repetition, of course, also mean, but this is obvious, the little, you know, the bar with the 2 dots, the repeat sign, then of course, you play the first part of the song, and then you know that it comes twice, right? Even then, in the repetition sign, you'll often find the repetition sign with a 1, and then with a 2. That means that of the whole thing you repeat, the ending is different. So all I'm saying is do the same all the time. You don't have to only go like, okay, I repeat the first section, good. You can do it with measures. So if the second half of the measure is the same as the first half, except for the final note, only think of the final note. Why are you worrying about everything else? That's the main thing, okay? And it works with everything. Even with the modes we looked at, remember? Don't study the mode from scratch. If you know your major scale, and I tell you that the Lydian mode raises the 4th, that's all you do. And if the Mixolydian lowers the 7th, and if the Lydian dominant raises the 4th and lowers the 7th, and if the Mixolydian B6, you know, uses everything except for the flat 6 and the flat 7. Now, what I'm demonstrating here is that you only focus on the things you don't know. And that's why it's so important to go back to the first step, which is really truly know what you're doing in small sections. So if I know my major scale, in and out, up and down, in all keys, if I know that, everything else is a variation, right? It's almost a complete repetition with some variation. The Lydian mode is probably what, 82%, 85% the same as the major scale. There's only one note that's different. It's no different than saying that the first verse is the same as the second, except for the final 3 notes. It's the same thing. You have to look at it that way. If I know my major scale and my minor scale, then all other scales are very, very much manageable. If I have this fog in my mind for everything, doesn't matter if it's scales, if it's chords, if it's a piece of music, I don't know the verse, but then maybe the chorus will work. It won't. You know, you have to have a structure. And that's it. So that's my advice, okay, for patterns. And then this one is to see the music. And this is something that's very personal, and so I don't know if it will work for everyone, but I use a lot of mental images, so like sight-based memory. As a matter of fact, if we were talking about when we were talking about the circle of fifths not too long ago in one of our videos, I have a picture of the circle of fifths in my mind. I have a picture of the sheet music to Beethoven sonatas that I'm playing. I see it in my mind. I actually see a photocopy of it in my head. And that's how I prefer to memorize, because I can see the whole thing at once. Okay, if I think of, you know, it's a mental image. So that's what I mean. So how can you use that? Well, for example, if you have trouble with, for example, a scale, and you just can't memorize it, which I don't think it will happen, but if it does happen, you can always do this. You write it down on a piece of paper, like 100 times. That's what I always suggest people do with the circle of fifths, for example. So I tell my students, go home and write the circle of fifths 50 times and bring it to me. So next week you bring me 50 pages filled with circle of fifths. And those who do it know the circle of fifths forever, because just by the act of drawing it becomes active thinking, and they get this image of this thing that they've drawn. And so if I tell you, think of a drawing you did as a child, you probably will remember in great detail that drawing. You can close your eyes and as if you were there. That's what you're trying to do. So if your ear, for example, is not trained yet or is not there where you want it to be, you can use your sight, which is an easier sense because it's more practiced, to memorize things. Okay, so you can try going to that. Another thing is I also memorize the image of performance. Now, this is probably getting a bit out there, but I will share it with you because it really works for me. So when I was starting out, I was 16 and I was already in a big band. We played big stages. We were very good. And I was the youngest in the band. They were in their 20s. And I had no idea of anything. I didn't know the name of the notes. I didn't even know what the strings were called. I knew nothing. And everything I played was based on sound, basically, but it was also based on, okay, I have to be there. You know, I could actually visualize everything I played. And it got me through many songs and many concerts, and I won awards as best guitar player, and I didn't even know what this string was called. Okay, so it's something you can revert back to, and sometimes you only need it for the really hard stuff. So as you build your vocabulary, like as you fulfill your basic foundational needs of knowing, for example, all your chords, knowing all your scales, right? Those building blocks, you can always revert back to it. Okay, so seeing the music, seeing yourself playing it, or seeing the actual sheet music, the page, the tablature, whatever it is, the chord diagram. If you don't remember a chord, try to write it down 10 times. Don't play it 10 times. You played it 100. If you haven't memorized it in 100, you're not going to memorize it with 10 more. But if you write it down on a piece of paper, write the diagram. Sometimes what happens is your mind switches gears, and if the ear gear is not working, then maybe the sight gear will work. All right? And this brings us to another a bit strange, esoteric thing, but it's not, right? I'm very scientific, actually. I'm not into all the strange new agey things. And so it is use all your senses. And if you see beyond it is a bit new agey, right? But it's not. So what I mean is, certainly you can't use taste. Like, you're not going to be licking your guitar, although I have done it. But and smell probably you don't want to do. You don't want to do smell. But you can certainly think of how the strings feel under your fingers. So for example, with bends, some people have a hard time. So if you play a half-step bend, what I would suggest you do is you play a note, and in your mind you sing the half step above, and then all you do is you match that you hear. And the reason is that if it's perfect. If it's not perfect, if you're actually following your ear, then that's easy to fix in case there's a mistake. Maybe you're going a bit flat, but if what you do comes from here, then you go, okay, well, I'm hearing it flat, so let me bring it up just a little bit. So it's easy to tune, right? Everything you control, it's easy to tune. When you have a lot of things that are out of control, then it's impossible to fix. So if you're a student, you come to me and you go like, oh, well, look, I can play like this, but nothing really works. Well, it's really hard to fix that if I see that you don't know what the notes should sound like, you don't know what your fingers should feel like, you don't know what frets you're playing. So, there's all these foggy things that we have to remove before we get deep into it. Okay, so what I mean by using all your senses is, if there is something difficult to play in one of my songs, that difficulty is actually part of what I use to remember it. You know what I mean? I take advantage of everything. If something is easy, then I memorize it because it's easy. If something is difficult, I'll use that as a reminder of what's happening. If something feels strange under my fingers, then I will use that as well. Okay, so I know now that part comes. And I can go back and practice it. I can make it, I can go back and work on it so that it's not as difficult to play, of course. But that's technique, that's not memorization. What I mean is, everything has a certain feel when you play the guitar. You know, that little part here that we play, there's a section that goes, now this is pretty hard to play, right? It's off, it's not following the same picking pattern as the rest. I'm talking about the same PDF that I showed you, upside up. So there's this little section, and this is something that catches you by surprise, but I know exactly where it's happening, and I practice it so that I know that I would be able to play it, and that's part of the whole thing. So I'm using not only my ear and sight if I have to, but I actually use the feel of the string. If a chord is difficult to play, then it's easier to remember. You almost all of you know the minor at 9, which by the way, it's coming up. If you don't know about it, let me just do a little parenthesis here. There's a series of videos that I make every Tuesday called One Chord a Week, and I think I always feel bad about saying it myself. I think they're great videos, and I think you should watch them. And they're easy to find. I'll try to post a link if I remember, but otherwise go to the channel. It's called One Chord a Week. Extremely easy to find, and every week there's a new chord, and you should watch them all, and you should learn all the chords. And then you'll thank me in a few months when the series is over, all right? And so if a chord like this feels so strange and so difficult to play, you will remember it, okay? You will remember it. So here's the trick. You will remember this because it is an extreme chord. You remember it because it has a lot of stretch, because this finger is tense and this one hurts and whatever, right? What I'm saying to you is that you don't need the chord to be difficult. You don't need the chord to be painful, shouldn't be ever. You don't need all that to remember a chord. You just have to focus on something else, physical. If I play this chord, not a lot of people, or this one, not a lot of people had trouble with it, but you can still focus on things. You can focus on the feel of these two fingers compared to this one. You can feel on the string on the finger. You can concentrate on this here, this space between the neck and the hand that you will not have when you play here. It's different, and so on. And you can choose to focus on anything, but all that tactile feel, and it's part of the memory. I don't know if I'm explaining it myself correctly, because I am talking to myself. It's hard to keep track of everything I'm saying, but I hope you know what I mean. So don't expect or don't wait for something to be difficult to use it to help you memorize it. Okay? Oh, that's a difficult part. That's easy to remember. No, you can do it with anything. You just have to find something to grab onto. You just have to find a physical or tactile aspect of it that makes it easy for your memory to grab onto it. Okay? I hope that was clear. And that's my advice. Use what you learn is basically what we said before. So everything you learn it well, and it will be a step to the next thing. If you don't have steps, then you're screwed, all right? And that's why, let me just plug my books for a second, but not really, it's about this. That's why in the books on alternate picking and legato, I do run the risk of making you run away at the first few pages, because the first few pages are just play on one string. Whoops, I dropped my pick. So play this. And play for many minutes every day. A lot of you will go like, screw you. I didn't buy the book to get this, or the legato, just do this for a few minutes every day. The reason is that you need those first steps, that foundation, you need it. And you need it with technique, we all agree with that. You need it with theory, so you wouldn't dream of learning altered chords until you know your intervals, right? Or until you know your seventh chords. But with memory, it's the same thing. So you need stepping stones for your memory to work. And yeah. And finally, I think memory comes from understanding. You can't really memorize things as much as you can understand them, so that's a whole other subject. But memory is actually understanding things. So if you understand what you're doing, you're not actually memorizing, you're just doing it, okay? So that's what you're striving for with everything. All right, so I hope I didn't kill you with all this talking. I've been talking for 40 minutes, non-stop, and I'm gonna have some tea now. But I will wait for your questions, all right? Because I like to hear what you think. And if you're new here, or even if you're not, please do use the comments, okay? Because I understand live videos don't have comments. Usually it's normal, but it really helps me out. It gets me thinking. And so I would really appreciate if you could take the time to, not, you don't have to, but if you have something to say, don't keep it for yourself. Put it down in the comments, and that way I think of stuff, and I can think of more things for the videos, okay? I'll use you as inspiration. So I'll wait for your questions. Let's see. So they're a thrash metal band. I will check them out. Reki, if they're good, I'll take your word for it. And Jim, I spent 1.5 years playing major scales every day. All right. Cool. So I guess you do have that down, right? So that's the other thing. While I wait for your questions, if you work like I'm trying to explain to you, then you will notice that you will have to work a lot less. Okay, so for example, I do play a lot, but I don't practice much. My practice is laser focused, and that's possible by slowly building up. Okay, so try to not waste time. This is for some other time, but try to know what you're doing. It's the same thing as before. Visualize what you want to do and do it. Don't play just to play. That's another thing that I try to teach my students. And by the way, for those of you who some of you already are, but for those of you who want, I have some options for studying, one-on-one online. I have students from Australia, from Asia, from Europe, of course. I have students from America, from South America. So there's options down there if you want, because of course these videos are by necessity, they're limited and they're not specific to your needs. So if any of you want, just letting you know that it's possible. All right, so I don't see any questions. We might have an early end to today's video, or if you want to share anything, I'm up for a chat. So I'll give you 1 more minute, and then if there's no questions, then we'll shut it down until next week. By the way, next week it's possible that I will have to make a pre-recorded video, a premiere video. I will let you know. Not sure I have questions, but I have some new approach to try out after today's lesson. Oh, that's good to hear, Jim. Yes, it's a bit of a, these things are a bit of a, basically all I can do is talk, and then whatever resonates with you, it will stay with you. So of all the steps that I've given you, maybe today you'd only get, 2 of them that match where you're at today. So don't worry about it. Just work on those 2, and then you can come back later, watch it again, and go like, oh, how didn't I think of that? And then you can use that. That happens with everything. I have some guitar books, like the famous ones, like for example, the chord chemistry that we talked about not too long ago, and that that book is like, okay, or the advancing guitarist. So I go over them and I go, okay, and out of the whole book, I will just focus on one thing because it seems natural. And then I go back months later and I'm like, why did I stop here? And I move. So it's okay if you don't get everything out of these videos. That's fine. That's fine. That's why I make so many of them, and so you can pick and choose. Can you talk about your synths? Oh, I love to talk about my synths. Not today probably, right? Because it's a long video. Do you guys like synths? I didn't do a video on synths because I thought these guys are guitar players. They don't care about synths. But I have a bunch of them, and some of them are very interesting. I have some old ones. I'm a big Queen fan, so I have the Corgam one that with the same exact sounds Queen used on Miracle and Innuendo. I got some Roland stuff, Moog. Yeah, I love to talk about synths. Let me know if you guys want to do a live stream on it, or maybe I can just make a quick video. And you love synths, all right, cool. Maybe we'll do one. All right, they're over there, so I'm not that much in control of my camera work yet, but I think we can do it. I like them myself. All right, well, I'll do it. I'll do it soon. And if you have more ideas, please feel free to share. Cool. So in the meantime, as we finish, let me ask those of you who are new, if you're watching this later on, if you could give me a hand with the channel, if you could just subscribe and maybe spread the word about this to your friends who play the guitar. That would be very much appreciated. I'm trying to get the channel started again after quite a few, probably years of not using it. So I'm now thinking that doing small steps is like being in Zen. Taking small steps reduces stress. Yes, and actually, Jenny, is the only way to do it. I've done both things. You know, I was wild when I started out, you know, and I was always very motivated. And when you mix those two things, you are in for wasting a lot of time. And I did waste a lot of time. I practiced in the wrong way, and I focused on the wrong things at the wrong time. And so that's what I'm trying to do with people who listen to me now, that I know a few things more than I did then. It's important. It's important to build a foundation. And so that foundation can be very small, but it doesn't matter. You know, if it's a very strong foundation, everything else is easier. So yes, certainly take it step by step, and don't focus too much on other people, because that's one thing. Somebody might see it from the outside, like a student will say, wow, look at this guy, he's doing records, he's doing this, then he does a soundtrack, then he learns the piano in 18 months. But it's not true, because in 18 months I play, you know, I dedicate so much time to each of these things that it can fool you into thinking that you should do the same. But we all have different circumstances. So if I play guitar 12 hours a day when I'm a kid, and I played for 10 years, I'll have played guitar more than you will play, not you, but other people will play in 3 lifetimes. So you can't compare yourself to it, right? When I do something, I might not have a talent that somebody else has. Like even guitar, I'm a pretty averagely gifted. You know, I'm certainly no genius when it comes to music. And you can't compare yourself to you know, oh, well, Mozart composed a symphony with, you know, when he was 5 years old. And that's one thing you have to be careful of, so you don't feel rushed. You know, that's what I found was the worst thing. Like, oh man, I'm in a band, I have to learn. And so I would do all these things to just playing catch up with all the other people who played in bands around Milan, and I thought they were better than me. But they came from different circumstances. Some of them were in their 20s or 30s, and I was 16. So I got really trapped into it for a while, and you know, in a way it was good. You know, it really lit a fire in me, but at the same time it caused a lot of stress. And I think when you're 16 you can be stressed, it's fine, but as you grow up, if music is your hobby and it's not your profession, then I would be mindful of it, right? Because I see that in people too. They play music for fun, and it's no fun. And it's no fun to be continuously stressed about it. I have to know everything because my teacher said so, or because that guy knows everything. And I don't know, I think you catch what I'm saying. So pace yourself, and always think that one thing done well is way better than 100 things done poorly. And that's 100% true. But yes, Jenny, that is absolutely correct. Okay, so if there are no more questions, I will then... Hey, Jiff, greetings from Missouri. All right, cool. I have only been to Missouri once, but in passing. It was in passing, but you know, the thing about the USA is like everywhere is great. It's like beautiful everywhere you go. Like from Florida to Alaska, everything is beautiful. So, all right, Jiff, are you new here? Well, let us welcome you to the group, and home of best pro. Yes, it is. I have a friend who's big time into it. Yeah, actually he collaborates with them. It's a small world. Maybe a lesson about using the wah-wah. Oh yes, there's nothing I love more than the wah pedal. How do you know, Reki? Yes, I'm looking at all my wahs down there. Oh, I'm sorry, Jiff, you're a subscriber. Great, good to see you here. Maybe you were here before. Sometimes we were talking about memorizing things in this video, and maybe I should shut up, because sometimes people come in and like, I already said hello like 6 months ago. And I'm like, okay. So, well, anyway, welcome anyway. We can welcome you twice. And a lesson about using the wah-wah, that's great. I might do it. I might do the wah thing, because I really love the wah pedal, as you guys know. I was actually surprised. You know, one time I was putting together a set list. I was putting together a set list for a show, and I looked at it, and my drummer is like, man, you're playing the wah in every song, because it was a short set. So I kind of picked my favorite songs, or the songs that I thought was right. And I had all these songs, and they all had a wah pedal. I think it was Power Fantastic. We had In Dreams. We had Midnight Driver. We had, you know, all these songs, and they all had a wah. And I said, well, so I switched to just not to be the guy with the wah all the time, but the wah is an addiction. You know, the wah is an addiction. I always say that if you give me a wah pedal and a delay, I'm good. I don't need anything else. So okay, I'll keep that in mind. That is a great idea. And so yeah, well, I'll see you next week then. Yeah, I'll think of something. As always, if I'm not here, I'll do a pre-recorded live stream, which means I will just talk into the camera like I would normally. It's not going to be edited. And then I'll try to join you in the chat room so we can watch it together. And I'll think of something. Maybe the wah pedal would be better if we're in person. And remember, Tuesdays at 5 p.m. Central European Time, we have the One Chord a Week series, which I suggest you watch. Love the Marshalls. Oh yes, me too. There's nothing, they're my best friends. You know, the Marshalls are great. And yeah, that's it. So remember, if you want to support the channel, there's books, there's CDs, there's the PayPal thing. You don't have to do any of that, but if you want to, that's how you help me out with the channel and the time and the effort we put in. And but you know, I'll try to keep doing it anyway, but you know what I mean. All right, and thank you very much for being here, as always, on a Saturday where I think you might have better things to do than listening to me, but you're still here, so I really appreciate it, and I will see you next week. And I will let you know, definitely you'll see an announcement on the channel if it's going to be a premiere or if it's going to be a live stream. Cool lesson, Andre. Thanks. Thank you, Jim. Thanks, Reki, Riff Jiff, Jenny, everybody else, Levent, and everybody else. And Sushant, hello. It's good to see you. You were in the shadow today, but it's good to see you. And I'll see you next week. All right? Have a great one. Bye, everyone.